Challah bread is personally one of my favorite breads as it's slightly sweet and it's a little bit like brioche, but it's so special. And that's really the only way that I can describe it. My favorite way to eat this, honestly, is to put it in a pan with like a little bit of butter, and then I like to get it nice and crispy on both sides. I know that this is not the most traditional way of eating it, but still, this is the way I like to eat it nonetheless. But despite my unkosher ways of cooking it, I still understand that challah is a bread steeped in so much tradition, having biblical origins from the pieces of bread given to priests to the lasting 15th century tradition of baking it for the Sabbath day. While I may not be Jewish myself, I'm grateful for all the people who came before me to fight to carry on these traditions, as not only is challah delicious, but I believe foods and breads such as challah become great uniters, even in a world with little shared understanding. I've been thinking a lot about these foods that bring us together lately, so for the next 5 videos, I will be showcasing treats which unite us continuously, even in such a decisive world. First, starting out with challah, the perfect, slightly sweet kosher accompaniment to any perfect meal. I hope you enjoy this recipe and the recipes to come. Now let's get on to the video. To a large bowl, I added 4 cups of leveled flour, 2 teaspoons of salt, and a whole packet of instant dry yeast. This equates to about 3.5 teaspoons of yeast if you are using it out of a larger container. I then mixed these all together, and then I added in about 5 teaspoons of honey. Personally, I like honey better than sugar, which is why I used it, but you can use sugar. I don't really know the conversions for that though. And then I added 3 eggs in a bowl, and I whisked those together, and I saved one on the side for like the little egg wash for later, but that won't be for hours. After whisking all my eggs together, I then added them into my batter slowly until all of it was a little bit incorporated, and then I added about 3/3 of a cup of vegetable oil. After adding the vegetable oil, I then kind of stirred that together a little bit once more before adding about 2/3 of a cup of water. Make sure that this water is warm, and make sure that you also have extra on hand. I found out that my dough was still a little bit dry after adding this much, so then I just liked being able to add a couple teaspoons more. Because this was getting pretty thick, I then actually just put this underneath my stand mixer and with a dough attachment, and then I just placed it in for about 6 minutes before I covered the dough for about 2 hours. I knew my dough was ready when I was able to press down on it and it was able to bounce back. Then I took my dough out, then I split it up into around 6 even strands. You can kind of choose how many strands you want to do. Honestly, I was having the most trouble shaping this, which you'll see later, but basically either way, you want to basically make your balls of dough pretty even and then kind of place them to the side. You're eventually going to want to roll out your dough into about 20-inch wads. These don't have to be perfect, especially because you're going to place them over and under each other, but just make sure that they're relatively of the same length. But if this is the case, you're going to want to have the longer pieces go inside, and you'll figure this out later. At this point, please watch this montage of me failing to get these 6 strands braided. Eventually I will stop this, but just watch me struggle for just the teeniest bit. If you do know how to braid challah, please let me know how you do it, but at the end, I eventually just did kind of a 6-strand braid where I kind of just folded them over. This really worked easily for me, and I think it's probably the easiest method. But if you know like a better method, please do that instead of what I did. But basically I just like folded over 2 strands over and over until like I got kind of a nice uniform loaf. After that, I actually covered like this loaf that I made with a towel for another 1.5 hours and let that rise. And using the other egg, I just like made a little egg wash from whisking that together, and I placed it over my loaf. This was super duper simple. And then like I just placed it in an oven for 475 degrees for 10 minutes, and then I lowered my heat to 350 degrees and baked it for another 20 minutes. I forgot to mention that I also sprinkled it with a little bit of salt before placing it in my oven. After my bread was finished baking, I let it sit for about 10 minutes before cutting it and placing it to a fancier pan. As stated in the top of this video, there are so many reasons to be grateful for challah bread. Even though it might just seem simple, it's rooted in so much tradition that could luckily and hopefully make it to your plate today. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please make this bread and share it with your loved ones. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and goodbye!